Okay, three, two, one, go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome, Alan. Thanks so much for joining me today. Really glad.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. And where are you calling from?
Dumas, Texas, north of Amarillo.
Oh, goodness. And how's the weather down there?
It was very cold this morning, but it's supposed to be 65 today.
All right. Well, we'll take it. I'm here in Montana, and yeah, we got snow on the mountain tops around me. So 'tis the season, huh? All right. Well, yeah, again, I really appreciate you joining me today. I wanted to connect because I know you have experience in construction monitoring, and I know
Mhm.
you're retired, so you're trying not to be too busy.
Right.
Sounds like you're actually struggling a little bit with that. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you mind just sharing the story of how you got started in drone construction monitoring?
Well, it all started 4 years ago when my wife bought me and the boys a Walmart drone. Um, we flew the drone 3 times and it mounted itself in a tree. And I told the boys, we're done. We're not doing drones because I'm not smart enough to run them. And about a year later, my youngest son said, Dad, the drone was fun. Let's get another one. And I said, if we do, we're going to spend a little more money and get something a little more reliable. So I bought what I thought was a more reliable drone. Uh, it was less than $1,000. And I thought, man, that'll be good enough. So we went out in the country and I videoed him on the side by side, made a nice little video and put it on YouTube. And a very respectable gentleman that I've known for years, who is a pilot, he messaged me and he said, Hey, do you have your 107? And I said, No, I'm just flying for fun. Now, that was back before the trust. And he said, Well, it's on YouTube, so technically it's commercial. And he said, I'm not hounding you about it, but they might, FAA might. So I just told myself, I'm not messing with that. I just won't put it on YouTube anymore. And the owner of the radio station here saw that flight and wanted to know if I would look at his radio tower east of our city for hail damage because he was having some problems with the transmitter. I told him I'm not a licensed pilot, I can't do it. And he said, What does it cost for a license? I'll pay for it if you'll do it. So I thought, it might get into it might lead into something. So I studied 160 solid hours of study time. I went and took my test, passed with flying colors. I got my license. I went to fly his tower, and that what I thought was a reliable drone got close to that tower and went nuts. It didn't like it. So I didn't lose it, but it wasn't going to work. So I called him, and he said, Well, I don't know what you're going to do, but I thought you were going to fly my tower for me. So I said, Okay. So I spent more money and bought an Altel Evo 2 and went out there. We flew it. We found his problem. It was a lightning strike on the second transmitter. Perfect, just like clockwork. And I had to do some YouTube research in reference to tower inspections just to know what I was doing. Um, it worked great. And then the phone started ringing because he started telling people about the drone. Um, I got some small real estate jobs. I still wasn't real comfortable with flying it. I didn't let them know that, but I wasn't real comfortable with flying it. Um, but it kind of grew from there.
Gotcha. So you really literally stumbled into it.
I really did. And
Yeah.
then I retired 2 years after I did the radio tower. And I had used the drone some. I'm an accident reconstructionist with law enforcement. So I used the drone some to reconstruct some of our accidents and mapping, um, just on a small scale, just small stuff. Um, so I was familiar with the mapping. Um, my first construction job was it was also an accident. I was at a live city event. A school administrator. They had 3 schools they were building. He said, "I would like to have some frequent video of the construction to show the school board one Monday a month. So we talked it over, and I kind of settled for less. You know, I should have charged him a lot more, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I had to start somewhere. So I did it every 2 weeks. Ended up doing it for 2 years, and he paid me one lump sum at the end. I didn't get anything between start and finish. But right at the end, he paid me. He paid me more than we talked about because it was beneficial for him. And along the way, I picked up some more construction jobs. I had to learn a lot about what construction wants, uh, and how to satisfy their needs with the deliverables. But it was a learning process.
Okay. What does construction want for their deliverable?
I'm sorry.
You said you had to learn a lot about what construction wants
I
with.
did. I do. I'm a dirt work contractor, or I have been part time nearly all my life. So I knew most about that. Um, it's really embarrassing when a contractor says, "I want you to key on a specific thing," and you don't even know what that specific thing is. You know, you need to learn a little bit about their business so you can relate, and they don't think you're stupid.
Would that be like a trusses or certain thing? I mean, I'm
Yes.
awesome
Yeah.
in construction.
Yeah. Yeah. Just sometimes they'll mention something, and I've been around it off and on, but there were some things. I can't remember what the first thing one of the contractors mentioned that I had no clue. Uh, it had the word gable in it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, you know, I kind of have an understanding of what a gable is, but I didn't really know.
Mhm.
So there, in this business, you kind of need to get an idea of what you're dealing with,
Mhm.
so you don't just seem completely out there. And there's plenty of YouTube. There's plenty of the internet's full of free learning. Um, so if you want to get into a certain line of construction or progression, read a little bit, look at it, and kind of get an idea of what they're doing, so you'll know what you're doing.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like you were learning on the fly. Did you end up on a certain process of, I mean, how would you, what, like a specific set of deliverables and how would you deliver them?
Every contractor is different. Every owner, every contractor, every finance company, everybody wants to see something a little bit different. Depending on who you go to work for, whether it be the finance company, the contractor, the owner, they're all going to want something different. And we all need to be on the same page from the word go. They need to understand what you're going to give them, and then you need to understand what they want. So you need to sit down and have a meeting discussing on what's expected of you, what you're going to give them. And then at the end of that meeting, I put together a proposal. It's not really a bid, it's a proposal on what my responsibilities are, what their responsibilities are, what they will be getting. Um, that way, everybody's on the same page. They have something in writing. Nobody can say, he said, she said.
Mhm.
It, everything's down on paper.
Mhm. Gotcha. And would you go into those meetings with like a portfolio and show them what you've done in the past or
I have examples that other contractors have allowed me to use.
Mhm.
I sell the rights to all my video. I don't want to own any of it. But there are some of them agreed to let me use portions of it for advertising, portions of it to for demonstration. Um, I just do my best not to identify them or identify the location.
Sure.
Um, just out of respect. I don't want somebody to say, "Oh, I know that contractor." You know, I just don't. I don't like to do that.
Mhm.
Um, I generally, and a lot of people hound me for this. They're going to get the first one free. My first flight's not going to cost them a dime because I want them to feel like I'm a part of their business and I'm not just in it for the money. I want them to feel like I really care about what they're doing. And that free flight means a lot. Um, that way, after the free flight, if they say, well, I would like for you to add this portion of the project a little bit more, it kind of gives us some learning room on what they're really going to want, even though you've already discussed it. They may have discussed something and then later feel, well, I should have mentioned I want this or I want that. That first flight takes care of that.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, and so the first flight you said is free, and you also mentioned that the first school, like that it was kind of hard to know pricing. How did you land on a pricing system that worked better for you?
On the schools, he just threw a number out there, and I got excited because it was a job. Um, Everything I do is within driving distance of my house. I don't have anything that would require me to charge mileage. Um, anything I do here is within 10 minutes of my house, both ways. So I don't have the mileage. It takes me most of them 12 to 15 minutes to fly it, less than 30 minutes to process it. So I came up with what I felt like was how much do I need to make an hour? Nowhere I can work part time do I make an hourly wage like I do now. Everybody's like, man, you make 100 an hour or you make 200 an hour. That's a lot of money. Well, I don't work all the time, but I don't want to. I'm retired. Um, so most of my construction sites, where there's less than 3 or 4 units, whether it be in housing or a building, uh, most of them $100 every time I show up.
Hmm.
So 200 a month for them for 2 flights.
Hmm. How many current projects do you have, if you don't mind sharing?
Do what now?
How many current projects do you have?
I have 12.
Well, okay, yeah, so pretty straightforward. Go out, just get her done. What drone
Yep.
are you using now?
You cut out, Sarah. What?
What drone are you using now?
I'm using an Autel. It's an Autel Evo V3 Enterprise. Um, I do some thermal work. We'll get into that in a minute. Um, that way, if I have to use RTK, I have that capability. Um, I have some contractors that have the ground equipment already. And when they're out there doing things, they'll call me and they'll say, hey, we've got the RTK set up. Do you want to come out and help? Sure. So I go sign on to their equipment. Um, it's a very stable drone. Um, I, in photogrammetry, the rolling shutter, I can't fly as fast as I would like due to the rolling shutter. The pictures are still good. They're just not, I call it zoomable. You can't zoom up from 200 feet to a piece of gravel where you could if it wasn't a rolling shutter.
Mhm.
It's still, the camera I have on it's 48 megapixels, so it's clear. It's just a rolling shutter, so I have to fly slower. I fly about 7 mile an hour, no more than 200 feet. Um, and it's great equipment. I've had, this is my second Enterprise, Autel Enterprise. I still fly my V2 6K. I do some mapping with it, no RTK. Um, but it's great equipment. I have some projects that um, DJI has them uh, geo-locked. It's not an illegal flight. It's not anywhere close to protected space or restricted space, but they have it locked out. It's too close to the courthouse or it's too close to it's locked out. The jail, unfortunately, is right behind the courthouse, so it's locked out. I can't fly within a block of there. It won't even take off. So I don't like the geolocation thing, the geolock.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't really realize it. I didn't know a whole lot about that when I bought Autel, um, but I'm glad I did because I don't have to deal with it.
Gotcha. Yeah. I also hate being thwarted by technology. Just
Mhm.
yeah. And now you mentioned thermal and you said you wanted to talk more about that in a moment.
Yeah, I have some contractors that when they want me to map, they want to show their underground utilities in the well, they may have been buried for 3 weeks. I'm not going to get a picture of that because truck's been driving over the trench. It's invisible from the air, but the thermal will still show it. The
Interesting.
ground is still enough temperature change that it will show it.
Uh-huh.
That comes in real handy when you need to map something that's been covered up for 3 weeks.
Uh-huh. Okay. Um, so how did you discover that?
Um, my son and I are big hunters, and we've been running thermal for years on our rifles. And I've just kind of learned from using thermal what it shows and what it don't. What it will pick up. It's very sensitive to temperature. Everything's based on temperature. Um, so I thought, well, I can see a road versus a plowed field because of the temperature of the soil. It holds heat longer because it's more dense.
Uh-huh.
Plowed field cools off faster. So I thought it's got to be the same way with the trench. It's got to be the same way with the job site. Um, and well, I've used thermal for years, just probably 15 years, just not in this field.
Okay. Yeah, because that's interesting. I haven't heard anyone mention that before. So the hunting connection, huh?
Hmm.
All right. So you have 12 projects currently. A lot of pilots I talk to struggle with finding, even one regular monitoring project. What
Hmm.
what do you think is different for you?
Uh, Part of my success is being in law enforcement in this area for 28 years total, 19 on a motorcycle. I met a lot of people. It's a small enough community that I know everybody.
Mhm.
Um, Everybody already knows my work ethic, uh, a little bit about my morals and ethics, what I stand for, am I trustworthy or not. I'm not perfect, nobody is, but what you do in your past follows you. So if you're good to people, they're going to be good to you, and I'm reaping that benefit. Um, Selling it to them is another thing. Um, some of them are pretty hard headed. Some of them have been doing it a certain way for years. Some of them have an iPhone 40 or whatever they're at now, um, and they think I don't really need that. I can do that. My biggest selling point is I ask them the first question I ask them is how many times does your phone ring in a day? Most of them it rings all day. Some of them have two or three sites going. They've got subcontractors, they've got finance companies, they've got owners, investors. Everybody's calling them. Where are you with this project? Did you get this part in? Did you get that part in? Well, by flying it every 2 weeks on a semi slow project, they send them the flight. They pay for it, but it benefits them. They send them the link. I do everything on Dropbox, not that I'm advertising for them, but then they can share the link and everybody has access to it. And it really helps them because nobody's calling where we at. They just look at the new video. And it kept their phone was hot. And they said, we can't believe how much the phone quit ringing.
Okay. That's interesting. So your value proposition is get get rid of a lot of that in middleman, essentially.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It puts everybody on the same page, and it only takes me 12 to 15 minutes to do it.
Uh-huh.
And that they like that. And money was the thing because a contractor bids on a job, $200 extra a month is a lot of money when you've already signed a contract.
Right.
Because where's that money going to come from? So the ones I've been working with for over a year, and the new ones, I recommend to them if they hire me to do a project or they talk to me about a project they haven't started, they need to work that into the bid.
Mhm.
That way, they don't have to worry about where the money's coming from.
Mhm.
And the owner or investors won't really have a problem with that because they're going to get so much valuable information from the flight. It's worth that to them to loan him the 200 a month.
Mhm.
Because when he don't answer his phone, they get frustrated.
Sure.
Um, it keeps them from having to get in their car and drive out there and look. They don't have to have meetings on site. It saves everybody so much time and so much money and so much heartache because they can't get a hold of the contractor.
Mhm. Hassle factor. Yeah, that's worth a lot. Peace of
Mhm.
mind for everyone. Um, and you mentioned how fast it is. Do you mind just sharing your your whole process from getting ready to leave your house to
Right.
sending out the link?
Um, I have everything. Of course, I have everything scheduled. Um, and part of the deal is it may not be every 14 days. Maybe 13 days this time, and it may be 15 the next. Weather, inclement weather, things change.
Right, we had to reschedule this. Yeah.
Right. So we have a window, a 2 day window either side
Mm-hmm.
that it'll get done. Everybody's good with that. Um, but on the day that I fly, I put everything in the car. I've got a checklist to make sure I've got everything. Um, I drive to the site. I try to pick days where there's not going to be as many people working. A lot of my flights are on Sundays because nobody's out there. And the reason for that is I don't want to get somebody in trouble with OSHA because they're not wearing a hard hat. Um, it hasn't ever been an issue, but it could. Other contractors sometimes see the flights, and I don't want another contractor. Well, how come he don't have these guys wearing this or wearing that or doing this or doing that? So I try to pick days or times when there's not going to be as many workers there. I show up. Of course, I've already looked at my weather. I've already looked at my location. Um, is it free to fly? No TFRs. Everything's good there. I go through my equipment inspection. I turn on my controller. I make sure it's working properly. And for those that's never done any of this before, turn your controller on and let it get started before you turn your drone on. Because there are some signals. I've only haven't had it happen once, but I've talked to others that have. They turned their drone on first and then went back to their controller and let it start up. They had a drone take off and nothing to control it with.
Oh, goodness.
So if the drone were to take off, I could probably get control of it pretty quick. But if my controller ain't even fired up, I'm just going to watch it do whatever it wants to do.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but anyway, I get everything fired up after I check my props, make sure my motors feel good, make sure there's no major stress cracks in my drone. I just go through the full inspection process. I take off. I let it sit there for a minute, make sure all my satellites are good for my GPS. Um,
What app
I
are
go ahead.
what I'm sorry, what app do you use?
What I'm using the Altel app,
Oh, okay.
the flight app.
Uh-huh.
Um, I use that one because I'm the most familiar with it. Uh, and if I have to do the photogrammetry, I can take the pictures and put them into another app if I need to. Drone deploy, 3D survey, and I use both from time to time. I was trained on drone deploy in law enforcement because most of our state law enforcement use drone deploy. and I do some work for them. We'll get into that in a minute. Um, but 3D survey is another good one. I'm not advertising for anyone. They're all good. Some will do things better than others, but they're all good.
Mhm.
Um, anyway, I get up in the air to my desired height. Um, I put the drone where I was last time, and I don't store my flights for each project. I've done them enough that I just remember where I was. I put my camera in nadir. I get over what I was before. I turn my camera to the angle I had it before, and I fly it. I fly in orbit at a height that I can see everything the contractor wants: the walls, the doors, the windows. Um, on a multi-story project, you may have to fly twice at two different heights. Um, but I fly it in an orbit. Um, I have my drone to take a picture every 5 seconds just for backup. I don't need it because I generally take my photos out of the video when I send them both,
Mhm.
because then I can pick that exact frame. Every 5 seconds, it might needed to be the frame prior to that.
Mhm.
So I take my pictures out of the video. Um, it, it it's a little more painstaking, but you get just exactly what you want. That way, you can zoom it up in post if you see a problem, or you can do a lot more in post than you can from the drone,
Mhm.
or as video and photos.
Mhm.
Um, I don't send the whole video because nobody wants to watch 15 straight minutes of a video. I edit it. Um, if I'm working on, let's say, one building, I get a video of the orbit around each corner and the center of each side, and then depending on the size of the building, sometimes from the top. So all of my videos that I send them generally aren't longer than 20 seconds total video, with photos included in the middle.
Mhm.
Um, and the reason I edit them partly is because sometimes in the middle of the flight, the sun will shine on the camera and it'll stop. I can take that out in the video so it don't stop and sit there for 2, 3, 4 seconds and then keep going. I make it real clean, make their videos real clean, um, show them what they want, and I've not had one complaint about it.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds very, yeah. Here's what you need, here it is. So you're not worrying about using waypoints, and you said like storing different flight paths for
Now,
jobs.
if I was doing, if I was doing a multi block housing uh, housing addition where I had 5 streets to fly, I might. Uh, I might do the waypoints. But generally, most of mine, the housing additions that I have are just one long street
Mhm.
at a time, and then they move over to the next long street.
Mhm.
Um, each one of those are separate flights. I won't do both blocks together. Um, I, waypoints just don't work for me. Most of my contractors don't care if I put together a time lapse at the end or not.
Mhm.
So it don't have to be exact. I mean, I can be a few feet in either direction or a few feet higher or lower, and it don't make them a hill of beans.
Uh-huh. Gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting. Keep it simple. Um, does the Autel app allow waypoints? I haven't used.
No, actually, you don't. Well, yes, you can. You can schedule your flight, where you want it to go, the angle of the camera. Um, I'm not the most techie person in the world, so as opposed to a lot of your other flight apps, it's probably not as efficient. Um, I just don't use them. I mean, after you do a site 2 times, you know where you're at. You
Mhm.
know what you got to do. You know the speed you need to fly. You know the heights and you need to fly. How far from the project you need to fly. And if you have a question with how far you are from the project, go back to your last video and look at it
Sure.
and zoom it up in post.
Yeah.
You know, you can make them exactly the same,
Uh-huh.
with the exception of camera angle. You can make them exactly the same.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
They'll just alike if you're flying the same speed.
that's very true. And what are you using for post?
What, what?
What are you using for post production? What app?
Um, I've been doing my hunting videos. I've been doing them for many, many years, and I do them on a MacBook Pro, using iMac.
Mhm.
I mean, a simple program. It comes on the computer. I've used it long enough that I can do as much with it as I can most anything, with the exception of color grading, um, raw video or raw pictures. The color grading is not as efficient as some of your paid for programs. Um, but if you got it right, if you got your ISO right and you got everything right when you're flying, you don't need to color grade a construction project. I'm not doing a wedding video with the drone, so
Right. Yeah, it's just like a yeah, temporary, very transient piece of information where, yeah. Um, I think that's a good point. You don't need to get too caught up in all those details. Um, Now I know that you're not looking to really to grow very big because again, this is your retirement. And by the way, thank you for your service in law enforcement. That's
thank you.
amazing. My best friend from high school is a detective, so
So good.
I was trying to say thank you. Um, but are you doing any prospecting or are you just kind of letting the fact that you are so established in the community?
A, a lot of my business is word of mouth,
Mhm.
but in the beginning, I did have to get out there and knock on doors. I had to go visit people. I had to sell myself. And when a construction job is over, if that if that construction manager don't have anything planned for a while, I don't. It's not like I need the money monthly. I'm not set on a plan, but I'd like to keep it up. I don't want to set. I don't want to set. I don't want to miss 4 flights a month because I'm not out there doing something. So I'll get out and I'll hustle up some more to make up for that.
Mhm.
Um, I did. Are you familiar with Bucky's?
Is it a restaurant?
No, Bucky's is a large convenience store
No.
in Texas. It's large. I mean, they'll have 40 fuel bays. Um, it's very large. Well, we got our first one in Amarillo, which is 45 minutes south of us. Um, I was on Facebook one night, and one of the news stations was talking about the new Bucky's coming in, and they mentioned the CEO's name in the article. So I didn't have anything to do, so I thought, wonder if I can find him on Facebook. So I found him on Facebook. I messaged him and told him, introduced myself, told him what I do, knowing to myself, I'm not going to get a phone call. It's not going to happen. Less than 10 minutes later, my phone rang, and it was him. Multi-billion-dollar company. The CEO called me, and I was ecstatic.
Yeah.
And I told him what I did. They have their own drone crew. They do their own surveying, drone surveys. They do everything. They have surveyors. They have everybody they need. But he said they're in Dallas, Texas. They're 6.5 hours from you all. Uh, can you do this, 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 and this mapping basically? And I said, yes, I can. And he said, let me hook you up with our drone crew. It may it may be to where they need you to do something because they can't get there. I said, I'd be happy to. Well, the next day, the drone crew, the leader of the drone crew called me, their head pilot, and we discussed what the drone could do. We yada yada yada, and I did 2 flights for them in a period of 2 years. And all I would do was get the data. I just got the data and I sent it to them with everything, GeoTIFF, the JPEGs for the photogrammetry, the whole. I just sent everything to them and they did their magic. So I kind of got a kick out of that. But
I-
you're not going to get business if you don't get out there and get it.
yeah.
Just because you have a drone, don't mean your phone's going to start ringing.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
No, I think you win the hustle award. That's That's amazing. Yeah, just throw it out there. And yeah, because if you gave
Yeah.
that's, something I kind of talk to people about a lot. Is like you have to give people the opportunity to say yes.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what you did.
Another thing that I want to recommend to everybody watching that's just getting started, go see your local chamber of commerce. Go see your local economic development center. You know that they're hired to make business better for their cities. Go visit them. Tell them what you do. Um, get on board with them because they're involved in most every project that comes to town. Nearly everyone needs to borrow money to get started. That's where they get their money is from the economic development
Mhm.
because they have that grant money available. And I stay in touch with them weekly to see what's coming.
Mhm.
And do you have any information? Well, we'll have a meeting with them next Monday. You want to come? Sure.
Mhm.
Go to the meeting and they introduce me. And that's where I do my sales pitch.
Mhm.
If not during the meeting, after the meeting.
Mhm.
And it's all about knowing people.
Mhm. Absolutely. That's yeah. So just the networking, the planting seeds, and you just never know when one's gonna pop. Uh,
My dad's favorite saying growing up is, "Son, you never have to kiss a butt, but it sure don't hurt to rub your cheek against it every now and then."
uh-huh. Yeah, we should that should be some sort of building somewhere.
Sorry for the mental picture.
No, I love it. Uh your dad sounds like a character. Now and do you have a website? Are you also just doing inbound?
Everything I do is off of Facebook and YouTube.
Uh-huh.
Everything.
Uh-huh.
I'm afraid that a website, I don't want to be that busy, sir.
Mhm.
I, I have friends. I have the only other drone pilot that I consider competition. He's not in town much. He works for a company. He travels a lot. He picks up some side work sometimes. He went and designed a website. He calls me half the time. Hey, can you go do this for me? Can you do this for me? Uh, he signed on to a railroad company in our area, and they call me a couple times a week. Hey, he's out of town. Can you do this for us? We're replacing rails from point A to point B. Can you get us a pre-flight? He'll do the after flight because he'll be in town, but can you get us the pre-flight? Sometimes I want to tell him no. Sometimes I want to say, you either hire me or find somebody else because I'm not picking up his slack.
Mhm.
I do it because I know some of the people that work there. I mean, it's out of courtesy, but um, he's my only real competition, and I'm not including the illegal flyers that are doing real estate stuff. You know, they're out there everywhere. Um, but he's my only real competition, and I don't really consider him competition. He has a website, and he can't do what he can't. You know, they contact him constantly, wanting him to do this or that. He's not here. I don't know why he has a website.
Mhm. Huh.
And frankly, I don't want to be that busy.
Sure. Oh, that's interesting. Does the railroad pay well?
I'm sorry.
Does the railroad pay well?
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I did a 2 mile flight, and I took a visual observer with me, who was also my pilot in the passenger seat, and I was the pilot, I guess, in charge. But um, we drove the 2 miles while with the drone in front of us, so I could watch it. Um, it was a remote highway. If anybody gets excited about that, but um, we did everything from the car and flew the 2 miles. And I felt like I could get in the middle of it and fly a mile in either direction, but I can't keep it in line of sight for a mile. There's no way.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to split their video up into 2 or 3 different clips. So we just made one clip for the 2 miles. And it turned out great. They were very happy with it. Uh, they were impressed. My camera is better than his, and he's flying LTL stuff. He's flying a Max 4T, which is their newest one, one of their biggest ones. Uh, but I think his camera settings are he don't. I adjust my ISO, and they called me the day before they wanted this done, and they said we need you here at 7 o'clock in the morning. I said it's not even daylight at 7. I need good sunlight to get you good video. They said we're going to have 150 subcontractors out here replacing this rail. They're going to be sitting on the side of their pickup smoking a cigarette until we get video that the company wants. We didn't know this guy was going to be gone. So I literally flew at sunup. Terrible lighting. I couldn't fly into the sun. I had to fly away from it. So I had to adjust my ISO. And it was a beautiful flight. I can't believe that it turned out as pretty as it did. But he doesn't. He just uses everything on automatic. I do a lot of times, but sometimes you have to adjust it because nobody wants to see a video of, for instance, a construction site where one whole side of the building is completely shaded out. Can't see anything. It's just shade. Um, so I pick my times that I fly. I want to fly between a certain time in the morning to a certain time in the evening due to the sun. If I can't, I'll adjust my camera or I do it in post.
Hmm.
Anyway, I'm sorry I got off on that, but
Oh no. That was, yeah, that's interesting and some really good points. With the railroad, do they just say, here's what we pay, or did your friend bid it? Do you know?
no, actually, we didn't even discuss it before I got done. Um, they were in such a hurry to have it done that I went and did it. And I went back to the main office and gave them the video, let them download off the card. And I said, we never discussed price and what this was going to cost. And I said, I generally charge my normal customers a certain price. And if I don't work for you, you're probably not going to get as good a deal. And that's just part of it. Um, I told them $400 for the flight, and they were tickled with it.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, I was gone. I was gone home. I was gone from the house less than an hour.
Uh-huh.
I gave the guy that went with me $50 for going.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So,
It's pretty amazing.
but they could not. They literally could not start that project without that video. The
Uh-huh.
company would not let them because this guy has got them used to the video,
Hmm.
got them used to seeing the progress.
Hmm.
And the company's like, we're not starting this until we get a video before it starts.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I wished I could have sold them the mapping to where they could have measured the rail, where they could have done some things, but they didn't have time for that. We don't have time for that. Just get out there and do it.
Yeah. In the dark.
They didn't want ground control points where they could see where the flight was and when it was. I told them I'll put a ground control point every tenth of a mile. That way you'll know exactly where it is. And when he comes back to flight, you can tell him and he can put his ground control points in the same place and I'll give him the exact location of the ground control point.
Hmm.
And they're like, we don't have time for that. Just fly it.
Hmm.
Okay.
Get her done, huh? Yeah, that sounds like an interesting one. Um, well, hey, I want to be really, respectful of your time, and I appreciate the time you've taken today.
Well,
Uh,
thank you. I really enjoyed it, sir.
yeah, if you don't mind, one last question.
Okay.
Just, looking back, is there one piece of advice that you wish someone had given you when you started out doing this construction monitoring?
Well, but what we already touched on is um, know a little bit about the project, know a little bit about if you were a contractor, what would you want in the video? Um, and of course, that goes with everything. Um, I do ground video too. I'm a full blown videographer. I do weddings, quinceañeras. I do everything you can possibly do with video or pictures. Um, know a little bit about what you're doing before you do it.
Mhm.
If somebody said, "Hey, do you have a camera? Can you take our wedding pictures?" and you didn't know one stinking thing about how a wedding was, you're going to be lost and you're not going to give them what they want. It's the same way with construction. It's the same thing with a concert. It's the same thing with a live event of any kind. If you don't know what's going on, sit down with somebody and visit with them. Hey, can you kind of give me a timeline as to what and when and where the things are going to happen?
Mhm.
Um, because I want you to get the best out of what I can provide you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Never skimp on equipment, ever. You get what you pay for. My next drone will be a free fly Astra, and it's not because I'm advertising for them, it's because of their full frame sensor on their camera. They have a real camera on there, not a 1 inch sensor like most drones have, or 1 1/4 inch sensor. It's a full blown camera. So you're shooting 68 megapixel and above, untouchable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can zoom up on an ant's eyeball from 200 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Never skimp on equipment. Get the best that you can afford. If you can't afford it, borrow the money and buy it
Mm-hmm.
because it pays for itself quick.
Mm-hmm.
I've not had one drone that didn't pay for itself in less than 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
and that's including my enterprise. Um, we didn't get into this, but I fly a lot for law enforcement. Um, I've had our state guys call and say, "Hey, our drone's having trouble signing on the RTK equipment. Can you come out and help us with this fatal accident?" I'll take my drone out there. I'll hand them the card at the end of the flight, and they have all the information. I do a lot of drug work for our local PD. Um, I do their pre-warrant flights, so they can add in their warrant the location and the application for the warrant. I do their raids. When they raid it, they watch the raid from the air, and then they use that in debrief what they could have done different. Of course, being that 28 years, that's what I did. So I'm kind of in tune with what they need.
Yeah.
Um, but all I can say in close is don't be afraid to knock on a door. All they can do is tell you no. It's not going to hurt to knock on a door
Mm-hmm.
because you never know what door opens and when you're going to get to step in.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get in, you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, be personable. Uh, Admit when you didn't get what you got. You know, they wanted something, you didn't get it. Go back out there and get it.
Mm-hmm.
If they call you in between scheduled flights and say, "Hey, we're fixing to do this. Can you get it?" Go get it. You know, if it's just an occasional thing, don't charge them for it. Just say, "Okay, I'm not going to charge you for this." You know,
That goodwill is worth it. Yeah.
yes. Oh yeah, the a 2 year project is worth a couple free flights. It's probably I'm not going to lie to you. It's worth every free flight you can give them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I think that's all amazing advice. And, I think, yeah, it's really cool to hear your story and how your, those connections have paid off. And yeah, really cool. So thank you.
you're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. And yeah, thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.